You wander back through the palace corridors, stepping around puddles of moonlight and leftover rain. A faint sweetness lures you toward the final course of the night, a quiet, almost sacred moment known by the kitchen simply as the closing leaf. It's not a grand banquet. Not even a formal dessert. Just a single dish, perfumed rice and banana leaf parcels. A cook waves you in with a gentle nod, and you step into a smaller, quieter annex of the kitchen. Here, there's no fire roaring, no pots bubbling. Just warm steam rising from woven baskets and the rustle of banana leaves being folded with practiced care. Each parcel is a triangle, no larger than a child's palm, bound in twine and stacked like little gifts. The smell is immediately comforting: coconut milk, pandan, and glutinous rice kissed with jasmine water. One cook dabs her fingers with oil and smooths the top of a parcel before tucking it into a lacquered tray. Her face is calm. Reverent. These parcels, you learn, are more than dessert. They're symbols of completeness. Wrapped food meant to contain not just flavor, but gratitude. After the richness of earlier dishes, the mushrooms, the fish, the rain tonic soup, this is a whisper of sweetness. A way to tell the body, rest now. You've had enough. You sit cross-legged by the bamboo wall and watch as the parcels are steamed for exactly 47 minutes, no more, no less. It's not just tradition, it's necessity. Too short and the rice is tight. Too long and it forgets who it is, says a cook, solemnly. You nod as if this is the most profound thing you've heard all day. It might be. A young apprentice explains the process. Glutinous rice is soaked overnight in water perfumed with grapefruit blossoms, then mixed with a touch of palm sugar and grated coconut. Sometimes, a single black bean is hidden in the center for luck. The parcels are wrapped in banana leaves, which are lightly brushed with sesame oil to add fragrance and keep them from sticking. Quirky fact? During especially stormy months, some chefs would insert tiny slips of rice paper inside the parcels, each containing a blessing or poem. You spot one tonight. It reads, "May your spirit be light and your rice never clump." You chuckle softly. Food Fortune Cookies, 13th Century Edition. Historians still argue whether these rice parcels were originally Buddhist offerings or royal inventions to use up leftover rice. Either way, they became tradition, passed down like lullabies. Some say the emperor always ate one before sleep, never two, never none. Your own parcel is handed to you, warm and fragrant. You unwrap the banana leaf carefully, and a gentle waft of steam rises like incense. You take a bite. The rice is soft, slightly chewy, with just enough sweetness to make you close your eyes. There's a floral edge from the pandan, and something nutty in the finish. It tastes like silence. No complexity. No performance. Just peace in edible form. You're not alone. Across the courtyard, others are unwrapping their own little pyramids. A steward eats his quietly under a fig tree. A musician holds hers in one hand, plucking a soft melody on a moon lute with the other. Even the palace cat, infamous and uninvited, curls up near a tray and pretends not to be hoping for scraps. Another detail you notice: a small dish of warm water is passed around, infused with lemongrass and lime. For rinsing fingers. For clearing scent. A soft end note for the tongue and the hands. The wind picks up slightly. The banana leaves overhead rustle like soft applause. The cooks begin cleaning with quiet efficiency, and you realize the kitchen will soon sleep. But not yet. Before leaving, a master cook kneels by a small altar tucked into the wall. He lights a coil of sandalwood incense, bows 3 times, and leaves the last parcel on a red cloth beside a bowl of tea. For the spirit of the stove, he murmurs, so that tomorrow's rice may also be sweet. And with that, you stand, full and quiet. The rain taps gently again, as if it too is unwrapping a memory. By now, the palace feels like a creature exhaling in its sleep. Hallways are lit only by flickering oil lamps. Footsteps are fewer. Voices soften. But not all the work is done. Because on stormy nights like this, there's one more responsibility for the palace cooks, preparing the food offerings to the ancestors during storms. You follow a small procession through a narrow corridor, 2 stewards carrying covered trays, a monk with an incense bundle, and a kitchen boy holding a clay lantern. The air grows cooler. The light dimmer. Somewhere beyond these stone walls lies the ancestral hall, a sanctum of polished wood, gold lacquer, and silence. The double doors open. Inside, shadow and glow. Tall spirit tablets carved with names and posthumous titles rest on a high altar, flanked by candles and vases of rain-drenched orchids. The floor smells of incense and age, as if time thickened here like tree sap. They place the food gently. A bowl of sticky rice, still steaming, molded into a perfect dome, a cup of green tea, its surface unbroken, and a plate of fruit, bananas, papaya slices, and small tangerines, carefully peeled so no juice touches the offering tray. A whisper, "Don't cut the fruit." You ask why. A cook explains, "Cutting is for parting. Tonight is for wholeness." You nod. It makes sense in a way that only sacred tradition can. They light the incense. The monk murmurs a short chant. Not in Vietnamese, but in Han Nam, the classical script once reserved for emperors, scholars, and spirits. His voice is low and rhythmic, like the rain tapping the roof above. Quirky detail? On especially stormy nights, the kitchen adds one unusual item to the offering tray, a lump of raw ginger wrapped in red paper. It's not meant to be eaten. It's to warm the spirits' stomachs and ward off chills in the afterlife. Historians still argue whether this was an imported Chinese custom or a uniquely Vietnamese gesture rooted in ancient animism. You watch the monk bow 3 times. The stewards do the same. And then, silence. Not absence. Presence. There's a stillness here unlike anywhere else in the palace. You're not sure what to do with your hands, so you hold them in front of you and try not to breathe too loudly. The flickering incense casts shadows on the altar, making the spirit tablets look like they're swaying slightly, nodding in approval, or maybe whispering back. And then, in a low voice, the cook beside you mutters an old proverb, "If the ancestors are fed, the storm will pass." It's both comfort and warning. Feed the dead, care for the unseen, and the living may find peace even in the loudest weather. One servant sets a final dish on the altar, a boiled egg, still in its shell. For rebirth, she whispers. You wonder if the emperor ever comes here. Probably. Quietly. Always alone. The offering is left untouched for hours. No one dares clean it too early. Let the spirits finish, someone says. Eventually, the food will be removed, gently reheated, never wasted, and shared with the kitchen staff. It's called luck or blessing food, said to carry wisdom and good luck, especially when eaten during the rainy season. A fringe belief says that if the tea cools too fast, it means a spirit is near. You glance at the cup. Still warm. Good. You back out of the hall, bowing slightly. The doors close, and the hallway returns to silence. Outside, the rain thickens again, tapping harder now, like ancestral fingers on bamboo drums. You pull your robe a little tighter and walk back toward the kitchen. Not for more food, but for the comfort of knowing that in this palace, even the dead are fed well. You're almost ready to drift off now, but the palace still has one more tale to share. And this one smells faintly of camphor, cinnamon, and regret. You round the edge of the kitchen courtyard, where the moon flickers between clouds, and you find a side chamber you hadn't noticed before. A medicinal kitchen, low-ceilinged and dim, where even the air tiptoes. Inside, 2 palace physicians hover over a patient. Not a grand courtier or soldier, but a weary cook, pale and doubled over from a recent misjudgment involving eel stew. Yes. Eel stew. A delicacy during the wet season, but only if the eel is fresh. And this one, apparently, was not. The physicians work quickly. One holds a ceramic spoon made of jade, believed to pull hot dampness from the tongue. The other checks the pulse by pressing fingers to the cook's wrist with the solemnity of a man decoding a poem. They consult a scroll written in tight script, an ancient guide to storm season illnesses. In it are remedies for things like floating spleen, trapped wind, and rice fatigue. Whether you believe in the diagnoses or not, the ingredients are very real and very dramatic. On the table. Leeches, fat and gleaming, a jar of cinnamon bark soaked in rice wine, dried scorpion husk, pickled betel leaf paste, used for calming the stomach and, apparently, romantic disappointment. You raise your eyebrows. The attending physician just shrugs. It works. You're not sure what it refers to. A poultice is made, heated, and applied to the cook's stomach. Somewhere nearby, a junior apothecary grinds ginger root and licorice into a powder and mixes it with snakebile extract, a remedy for cooling excessive fire. It smells awful. And somehow familiar, like the time you forgot about pickles in the back of your fridge for 7 months. The cook groans dramatically. A heated debate breaks out over whether the patient should now be served warm rice water, a bit of fermented tofu, or nothing at all. One of the physicians invokes an older court practice, the rice silence, a rule that forbade food for exactly 1 bell cycle after treatment. Another disagrees. Let him sip, or his chi will collapse. Historians still argue whether these treatments were more superstition than science. Some scrolls praise eel as a heaven-slick dragon food, while others claim it causes madness if consumed during new moons. Who's right? No one agrees. But everyone has an opinion. You slip over to a side table where a teapot simmers. A young apprentice pours you a tiny cup of ginger lotus root tea, meant to keep observers calm during medical episodes. Storm nights stir the bile, he says. You nod wisely and sip. It tastes sharp at first, then buttery and floral, like medicine wrapped in poetry. Quirky tidbit? One emperor once faked a stomach illness for an entire week just so he could avoid council meetings and stay in bed sipping healing broths. The kitchen caught on when he started requesting second helpings and humming between spoonfuls. Tonight, though, the pain is real. The cook winces as the poultice is removed. The sweating has stopped. A good sign. The physician nods and produces the final tool, a tiny horn cup used for fire cupping. A flame is passed quickly inside, the cup placed on the back, and a faint pop signals the draw. The skin rises beneath it like a pink bubble. You wince in sympathy. The cook sighs in relief. A dish of warm rice congee, plain and comforting, is finally offered. He takes it gratefully. The first spoonful disappears. So does the second. By the time you leave, he's resting with the warm stone at his feet, his stomach calm, and his expression blissfully blank. You step outside again, past drying herbs, past the scrolls, past the room where cinnamon barks dream. The rain is gentler now, the air cooler. The palace settles once more. And you think, maybe it wasn't just food that made this place sacred. It was how even suffering was given ceremony, how illness was met with warmth, and how something as small as a spoonful of rice could become hope, healing, and hush all at once. The palace has grown nearly silent now. Even the rain, once boisterous and loud, has thinned into a whisper, a light tickle on the tiled roofs, barely there. You step through a corridor lit only by the faintest amber glow. Candles flutter. Shadows stretch. It's the hour when even memories seem to tread softly. The kitchen is closed. Fires banked low. And yet, tucked into a narrow alcove between the main hall and the emperor's quarters, something warm still waits, a small, lacquered tray. On it, a midnight snack. This is no royal banquet. No poetry in soup form. Just comfort. Humble, careful comfort. 2 sesame rice cakes, round and golden, still warm. A tiny bowl of rice milk, faintly sweet, steamed just enough to soothe without waking the senses too much. It's tradition, this little meal. Not every emperor demanded it, but every emperor was offered it. You crouch beside the tray, inhaling the scent of toasted sesame and faint ginger. The rice cake is crisp at the edges, soft inside. You bite in, and it crumbles gently, sweetened with palm sugar and coconut shavings, a taste so simple it feels like it was invented just to quiet the heart. This isn't a snack meant to impress. It's the edible version of a lullaby. One kitchen scroll even refers to it as the silence maker. Quirky fact? There's a little superstition among palace cooks: if the rice milk cools too quickly, the emperor will dream restlessly. So each bowl is served with a lid carved from fragrant bamboo, said to trap warmth and blessings. You lift the lid. Steam drifts upward like prayer. You take a sip. It tastes like rice fields under moonlight. Like home, even if you've never lived here. Sweet, soft, and warm enough to reach all the corners of your stomach where uncertainty sometimes hides. You hear the soft clang of a bell, one single chime. A palace servant passes by and nods. He has gone to sleep, she whispers. You understand. The emperor's last meal of the day was taken in silence, like every year during rainy season. The kitchen tray will be removed now. Any uneaten food returned to the hearth spirits. Nothing wasted. Nothing forgotten. You linger just a little longer, watching the sesame oil on your fingertips glisten under the candlelight. The world feels distant now, slowed to the rhythm of dripping leaves and steady breath. And then, without really deciding to, you lean against the wall. Close your eyes. Just for a moment. Wind down, 300 words, so here you are. Warm, full, surrounded by the soft echo of monsoon rain and the last traces of toasted sesame in the air. You've traveled through every chamber of a palace, not just of stone and wood, but of flavor, of rhythm, of memory. You've watched soup stir like slow thunder, tasted lotus wrapped in silence, sipped wine meant for spirits. Now your breath slows, your fingers still. Your thoughts, once busy like the bustling kitchen at dawn, begin to settle like tea leaves at the bottom of a cup. The rain, too, has grown drowsy. No longer tapping, just brushing the window panes, like the gentle sweep of silk sleeves in a temple corridor. The world doesn't need you to listen anymore. It just wants you to rest. Maybe you're lying down now. Maybe your eyes are already closed. Maybe the sesame cake was real. Or maybe it was just a story whispered into your ears by a palace dream. No need to decide. You've walked the halls of history tonight, heard its soft jokes, sipped its secrets, and now, like emperors before you, whether triumphant or tired, curious or quiet, you've come to this final moment. A cup, a pillow, a rain-soaked lullaby. Sleep well, traveler. Hey guys, tonight we travel back through the mists of time, not to a dusty battlefield or a storm-tossed ship, but into something far more mysterious, the royal kitchens of medieval Vietnam, deep in the rainy season. You're not marching. You're not fighting. You're not even bathing in cold river water under threat of leeches. No. You're simply hungry. You find yourself standing barefoot on cool stone tiles. Rain taps softly against paper screens. The air is thick with the smell of damp earth, fresh lemongrass, and the distant tang of fermenting fish sauce. You squint through the haze. Ahead, warm light spills from an open kitchen doorway. A cook, barefoot like you, hunches over a clay brazier. He doesn't see you. His hands move quickly, wrapping something pale in banana leaves. You take a step closer and your stomach growls. Loudly. Embarrassingly. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're tuning in from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're in the kitchens of the Lai dynasty, sometime in the 12th century, when Dai Viet medieval northern Vietnam was soaked in monsoon rain and ceremonial incense. The emperor, cloistered in wood-paneled chambers somewhere above, is still asleep. His breakfast must be ready before the bell tolls at dawn. You crouch beside the kitchen fire. Water drips from the rafters. A low-slung roof, thatched and mossy, hums softly under the rain's rhythm. Around you, kitchen staff whisper as they work, slicing fermented bamboo shoots, grinding sesame seeds with a heavy stone roller, pounding rice into a creamy paste. The night watch guard outside slumps beneath the wet conical hat, half asleep. The main pot on the fire is porridge. But this is no peasant's slop. It's chowsun, rice gruel enriched with lotus seeds, ginseng root, and the delicate slivers of a white mushroom that only grows after 2 nights of rain. It's the emperor's rainy season ritual. A breakfast of balance, of peace, supposedly calming for the body and spirit. Though historians still argue whether it was mostly ceremonial or genuinely preferred. A low-ranking steward, dressed in simple blue robes, leans close and sniffs the pot. His eyebrows twitch. "Too much star anise," he mutters, and walks off. The cook stares after him in dismay, then ladles a bit into a clay bowl and tastes it for himself. His eyes close. He smiles. He adds a pinch of rock salt and a swirl of ginger juice. That ought to do it. Outside, the sky lightens a little. Not sunrise, but a pale, moody gray typical for this month. You step out from the kitchen and glance down the corridor. You spot an old court eunuch standing under the eaves, holding a tray with 2 teacups. He doesn't move. Just waits. The emperor will wake soon. In this palace, food is both nourishment and symbol. Every grain of rice in that pot was soaked, hand-washed, sun-dried, and blessed. Every lotus seed was chosen from a sacred pond in the capital's northern garden, where white egrets are rumored to land only before auspicious meals. Quirky fact? One 11th century account suggests a king once banned garlic during rainy months because he believed its scent offended the water spirits. That same king also believed pickled radishes could cause thunderstorms. You quietly promise never to combine the two just in case. A junior cook brushes oil across a steaming bamboo steamer filled with dumplings. Inside them? Minced eel, peppered with tiny wild herbs. You're not sure if that's breakfast or lunch prep. Either way, the smell is rich, gamey, and oddly comforting. The wind shifts. A burst of rain rattles the shutters. Somewhere deep in the palace, a gong rings. Once. Twice. Time to serve. The steward returns, this time holding an embroidered cloth to cover the breakfast tray. A golden chopstick rest is placed with extreme care. The porridge is poured into a deep blue ceramic bowl, steam curling in lazy spirals. You step aside as 2 silent attendants lift the tray and vanish into the inner palace, feet whispering on polished wood. And you? You stay behind. A cook offers you a tiny leftover bowl, half full. You blow gently and sip. It's warm, slightly sweet, and ends with a zing of ginseng that wakes your mouth, even as your body melts into the rainy hush. You don't get far before the aroma pulls you sideways toward a side alcove where the kitchen staff is quietly preparing the emperor's second course. Because in the rainy season, the royal morning isn't just porridge and prayers. No, it's a curated progression. Breakfast, but elevated. You're about to witness the sacred dance of steamed river fish and wild ginger. A long wooden table stretches under an awning thick with cobwebs. On it lies a woven basket, half covered in banana leaves. Inside, silvery scaled fish, their glassy eyes blinking no more, tails slightly curled from the ice-cold river water they were pulled from not even an hour ago. Still fresh. Still perfect. A boy no older than 12 wears a robe 2 sizes too big and begins washing the fish with salted lime water. He sings under his breath, badly off-key, but the rhythm is hypnotic. You lean against a damp pillar and breathe in the sharp scent of citrus and brine. The fish are wrapped in layers. First with slivers of wild ginger, then whole stalks of lemongrass, a shake of crushed peppercorn, and a drizzle of fermented soybean paste. Not too much, the emperor once spat it out when it overpowered the ginger. He didn't yell. He didn't scold. He just gave the cook a single glance. That glance earned the man 3 months hauling firewood. As the fish are wrapped, steamers are stacked one on top of the other. No clay ovens for this dish, only bamboo, firewood, and patience. You notice how everyone moves just a little more carefully. This dish is important. There's a folk belief still passed down in parts of Vietnam today that eating river fish during the monsoon connects your body to the flowing energies of land and sky. Some ancient scholars claimed it cooled the liver. Others said it heightened fertility. And then there are the ones who believed, quite sincerely, that fish cooked during rain could attract ancestral spirits if not prepared with proper care. Historians still argue whether this belief influenced the way fish were seasoned spicy enough to ward off wandering ghosts, but not so strong as to offend the ancestor watching over the palace from the spirit tablet hall. Suddenly, a bird lands on the tile edge of the roof, a soaked myna, feathers puffed, glaring at you like you just interrupted its morning nap. Somewhere inside, a gong chimes again. You're already used to the rhythm of this world. 1 gong means preparation. 2 means service. 3, well, you haven't heard 3 yet. Let's not push our luck. The steamer lids are lifted, and a thick, earthy scent escapes: smoke, fish oil, pepper, ginger, and something else, almost floral. You realize someone added a few petals of magnolia flower to the steaming basket, a tradition linked to fertility rituals during early dynastic rain festivals. You blink. Maybe it's just garnish. Or maybe someone in the kitchen is angling for a royal heir. A server rushes in with a carved wooden tray, each fish parcel placed delicately on its own section, like little silk-wrapped gifts. One cook eyes the presentation with a frown, adjusts the angle of a parsley leaf, then nods with final approval. The tray vanishes through the side door. One curious detail? A travel diary from the Tran dynasty later noted that during extended rainy seasons, fish with red gills were strictly avoided in court meals. Why? Because red, in wet months, symbolized boiling blood, which was thought to invite fevers or disharmony. Even fish could send political messages if served on the wrong day. You're offered a small sliver of leftovers, barely a bite. It flakes apart under your fingers. The flavor hits your tongue in waves, soft, peppery, slightly smoky, with a ginger kick at the end that clears your nose like medicine. You try not to hum in satisfaction. In the silence that follows, rain taps a bit more insistently on the roof, and someone somewhere in the garden plucks the strings of a dan tran, soft and slow. The emperor eats in solitude, but the entire palace listens for the sound of his chopsticks clicking once against the porcelain, a signal that the next course may begin. And you? You stay where it's warm, breathing in steam and stories, already wondering what they'll serve next. The sound of the emperor's chopsticks fades like a ripple across a still pond, and the kitchen shifts again quieter, yes, but no less focused. You follow the rhythm of soft sandals against wet stone, drawn toward a separate courtyard where the next dish is being prepared. This one, they say, is especially suited to damp mornings and swollen rivers. Steamed river fish was just the opening act, now it's time for duck eggs. But not just any eggs. No, these are salted duck eggs, pale gray and marbled, their shells faintly speckled like old porcelain. You hover near the edge of the storeroom, where the air is heavy with something pungent, almost earthy. A little bit like brine, a little like mud, and a whole lot like the mystery of old kitchens. Two cooks, one short and wide, the other tall and bony, argue in hushed tones over the correct method of salting. You catch snippets of debate. Whether they should use clay pots or ash-glazed jars, whether rainwater or well water should be used for rinsing. It's oddly passionate, and they look seconds from slapping each other with ladles. Historians still argue whether these kinds of egg-preserving rituals had their roots in Chinese court practices or if they were a distinctly local invention with religious ties. The tall one wins the argument, and he proceeds to gently tap the top of one egg with the back of a spoon. Crack. Peel. The yolk inside is deep orange, almost oily, the kind that glistens and smells a little like the ocean, a little like roasted peanuts, and just a smidge like something that's been hiding in your grandmother's cupboard for a suspiciously long time. And yet, this smell, this odd, fermented richness is considered exquisite. Especially during rainy season. Why? Because salt preserves. And during weeks when the river overflows and no boats dare travel and all you have are what's in jars or baskets, that salt becomes a royal savior. You watch as they slice the egg into perfect wedges and arrange them around a platter of pickled mustard greens. Nearby, a side dish of shredded green papaya glistens under sesame oil, waiting its turn. You can't help but notice a bowl of rice porridge again, this time much plainer, meant as a companion to the salty richness of the egg. Everything in balance. A whispered rumor floats by as you observe. One emperor in the mid-13th century reportedly requested 42 different salted eggs, each from a different province, for his rainy season birthday banquet. The logistical nightmare of transporting that many duck eggs through flooded roads? That's a tale best left for Section 11. You crouch beside a clay shelf lined with aging jars. A tiny cat, sleek and damp from the mist, hops up and sniffs one of the open lids. The cook waves it away, half fondly, half threateningly. "Out, demon whiskers," he says under his breath, as though the cat is some minor god of mischief. And speaking of the divine, some old belief systems claim that salted duck eggs align the body with lunar cycles, especially if eaten during heavy rains. There's no science to back that up, of course, but when the moon is veiled in clouds and the wind howls like a forgotten ancestor, a little yolk-based mysticism doesn't sound too strange. Your tiny bowl arrives. Just a slice of egg and a dab of pickled greens. You chew slowly. It's salty, creamy, oddly gritty, but not unpleasant. The oil coats your tongue. The greens cut through it like lemon in tea. You understand now why this was chosen. It's not just food. It's mood. Weather, memory, ritual. Wrapped in a bite. The rain falls harder. A line of servants scuttles past with covered platters, keeping their heads down, letting their soaked sleeves hang. The wind carries a hollow laugh from somewhere up in the wooden eaves, or maybe that's just the old beams settling. You remain in the kitchen a while longer. The fire crackles low. A wooden spoon rests in a bowl of sesame oil, forgotten. And outside, the rain turns the palace gardens to puddled ink. The rain continues its steady percussion on the rooftops as you follow the scent of something sweeter, something gentler. The air here is warmer, less briny, more floral. Someone just opened a tin of lotus-sweetened mung bean paste, and it smells like a dessert being told in whispers. It's afternoon now. The emperor has retreated into his calligraphy chamber. The courtiers are off arguing about irrigation or calendars, and the kitchen's slow to a lull. But don't mistake this pause for rest. No. It's time for the rainy day tea ceremony, and with it, a confection that's part snack, part offering, part miniature edible poem. You step onto the veranda, where a long wooden table has been set with bowls of lotus tea, still steaming. A servant wafts away the condensation from one with a peacock feather fan. You peer closer. The tea isn't just floral. It's complex, steeped overnight with jasmine and dried pomelo peel, then reheated slowly over a ceramic brazier. The petals still float. A low tray beside it holds perfect little cakes, round, pale yellow, dusted with rice powder, and tucked into green banana leaf squares. Each one is filled with mung bean paste that's been whipped until it's silkier than mashed potatoes and sweetened with cane sugar boiled in coconut milk. But wait, what's that smell? It's deeper than just sweets. Earthier. Someone's grilled a few cakes over open charcoal. You lean closer, and sure enough, there's a thin crispy crust on the underside, like caramelized sugar on creme brulee, but with rice instead of dairy. Now here's a twist. One scribe recorded that certain emperors preferred their tea cakes flavored with lemongrass ash, yes, ash, believing the smoky tang balanced the floral overtones. Historians still argue whether this was a genuine culinary choice or just a royal tantrum that turned into tradition. Either way, you're spared that detail today. Your cake is ash-free. You sit cross-legged near the servants as they prep more trays. One of them drops a cake. No panic. He eats it, winks, and keeps going. These rituals are technically sacred but also wonderfully human. You learn that rainy day tea sessions weren't just for refreshment, they were opportunities to reflect, read, listen to poets, or simply sit in silence while the rain painted little silver rivers down the windows. One 12th century journal even recounts how the emperor would assign ministers to write haikus about their tea snacks. One unfortunate official compared a dumpling to a damp frog, and his poem was politely ignored forever. Quirky detail? There's a superstition that if you eat an odd number of lotus seeds during a rainstorm, it invites melancholy dreams. Even now, a servant counts carefully before spooning them into the tea bowl. 6. Not 5. Not 7. You're handed a cup. It's warm and fragrant, with a flavor like a flower garden after a thunderstorm. You sip slowly. Your fingers warm around the ceramic. Someone begins plucking a Dan Noyette, a two-stringed moon lute, soft and slow, the notes curling like incense. You take a bite of the cake. The paste melts immediately, just sweet enough, but not cloying. It has the texture of memory, the kind that returns when you smell a flower you can't name. The emperor never eats during these tea sessions. Not visibly, anyway. A covered tray is quietly delivered to his chamber. The cakes on that tray are shaped like lotus blossoms, a subtle nod to his title as Son of Heaven. You wonder if he even tastes them, or just watches the rain while court musicians hum lullabies. The kitchen quiets as the last cakes are boxed and the tea is gently reheated for anyone lingering. You glance up. The ceiling beams are dark with moisture, but no longer dripping. The rain is easing. And just when you think things can't get cozier, someone brings out a little side dish of candied ginger soaked in honey. For the stomach, a cook whispers. You take one piece. It stings, then soothes. Like a hug from a strict aunt. The emperor's household doesn't rush through rain. It listens. It steeps. It savors. And in this afternoon lull, with tea in your cup and sweetness on your tongue, you almost forget there's a whole rainy world outside waiting to soak your sleeves again. You stretch your legs and drift toward a darker wing of the palace kitchen, where the walls are thicker and the air smells older. Gone is the scent of floral tea. Here, it's all salt, vinegar, clay, and thyme. You're stepping into the fermentation chamber, home of the court's pickled treasures. The light is dim. No windows here, just oil lamps flickering against walls lined with massive clay jars, their mouths sealed with banana leaf caps and tied down with rattan string. The floor is slick. Every step echoes. You feel like you're inside a pantry designed by a particularly meticulous monk. A bent-back steward guides you along the row, lifting leaf covers one by one. Pickled mustard greens, he mumbles. Then, bamboo shoots with garlic. Young mango slices in fish brine. And this, he pauses dramatically before opening a wide jar near the end. This is the emperor's favorite, fermented shrimp paste aged since last monsoon. You nearly take a step back, because that smell hits like a gust of warm, briny sock. It's Mam Tom, or something very close to it, sharp, funky, and revered. You glance around, hoping no one saw your nose wrinkle. A nearby cook grins. You get used to it. Or you don't. Now here's a curious historical fact. One 13th century court physician insisted that fermented shrimp paste, eaten in moderation during wet months, could prevent coughing illnesses and water lung. Scholars today are baffled, both by water lung and the idea of curing anything with something that smells like it could end friendships. Historians still argue whether these jars were rotated seasonally, or if older pastes were deliberately aged for years like fine wine. Some texts suggest a 3-year-old fish paste was once gifted to a visiting envoy from the Song dynasty. No record on whether he accepted it or quietly regifted it to his enemies. Back to the pickles. A cook opens another jar and hands you a thin slice of what looks like daikon radish but has been dyed faintly pink from soaking in hibiscus water. It's crunchy, sour, slightly sweet, and explodes on your tongue like culinary firecrackers. You immediately want more. During the rainy season, the royal kitchens became preservation hubs. With roads flooded and hunting grounds slippery, these jars were insurance flavor trapped in time. A few are even labeled with verses of poetry etched into the clay, indicating what year the ingredients were gathered, what day they were sealed, and sometimes even who cried while slicing the onions. One simply reads, "A rainy day, a bitter root, a hopeful tongue." There's also an old superstition lingering here. opening too many jars in a storm could offend the kitchen spirits. So each day, only a few are unsealed. Offerings of rice and salt are made to the hearth before the lids are lifted. A cook nods toward a bowl of rice left steaming beside the fire. For the spirit. Not for us. You spot one jar slightly cracked open. Inside, pickled eggplants, tiny and round, the kind that pop when you bite them. They're floating in rice vinegar with bits of red chili. You steal one. It's electric, sharp, tangy, with just enough burn to wake the back of your throat. Another odd tradition? During certain years, a jar would be buried in the palace garden, left for the rain to bless and the worms to ignore. No one's quite sure why. Some say it was a ritual. Others say it was just a way to clear shelf space and pretend it was spiritual. You've now tasted 4 kinds of pickles, 3 kinds of vinegar, and at least one thing you can't name. And somehow, you're still hungry. Before you leave, a kitchen apprentice hands you a bowl of rice and gently pours over it a ladle of the pickling brine from one of the mustard green jars. This is for the true believers, he jokes. You eat. It's sour, salty, and oddly comforting. Like chewing on a thundercloud that's been aged to perfection. Outside, the rain slows to a drizzle. A frog croaks near the lotus pond. Somewhere, a bell chimes once. You wipe your hands on your robe and continue on. Deeper into the maze of steam, fire, and strange delicious ghosts. You step out of the pickling chamber just as a faint ray of silver light cuts through the mist enough to remind you that the world hasn't disappeared under the rain. Just softened. Somewhere near the garden wall, you hear the steady patter of slippered feet and the swish of a blade through wet grass. You follow it. And suddenly, you're not in the kitchen anymore. You're in the foraging grounds of the royal palace, a carefully tended jungle disguised as a garden. And here come the umbrella-hatted foragers, weaving between puddles and moss-covered rocks, their conical hats dripping, their woven baskets already heavy. What are they gathering? Rain mushrooms. Yes, really. Rain mushrooms, or nam mua, aren't a culinary invention, they're a phenomenon. These fragile, gilled miracles sprout only after several consecutive nights of warm rain, and only under very specific trees, lungan, jackfruit, and sometimes even the odd areca palm. The palace keeps a close watch on where they appear. The best ones bloom for just 2 days, and then vanish back into the forest floor like shy ghosts. You follow a forager, an old woman with a permanent squint, into a patch of low shrubs. She gently parts the leaves and points. There, pale white, trembling slightly in the breeze, is a mushroom no larger than a plum blossom. She picks it with reverence and drops it into a basket lined with banana leaves. They'll be sautéed later with sesame oil and scallions. Or steeped in broth with thin shavings of pork belly and bitter herbs. The flavor? Earthy. Slightly sweet. Subtly medicinal. Said to restore clarity and gather the cheese scattered by too much rain. That last part? Total hearsay. But the emperors believed it. At least during the Liu dynasty, when rain mushrooms were used in royal longevity soups. Historians still argue whether these fungi had real nutritional value or if they were prized mostly for their mystique. Honestly, they could taste like wet socks and they'd still be considered royal delicacies simply for how rare they were. You watch another forager unearth a different kind of cloud fungus, a jelly-like mushroom that shimmers with a translucent hue. It's rinsed gently in rainwater, then set aside to dry on a bamboo mat. Too much sun ruins it, one of the foragers whispers. Not that there's any danger of sunshine today. One delightful fringe belief? That eating rain mushrooms during monsoon season could help you dream of your ancestors' wisdom, but only if you ate them with your eyes closed and your feet pointing north. No one you ask is sure where that came from. It might have started as a joke by a palace poet. You never know. A large clay bell chimes from the kitchen. The foragers pick up speed. They must deliver these mushrooms before the next course is assembled. You return with them, through slick courtyards and hanging gardens. The cooks take the baskets with quiet nods, already preparing the hot pans. You get a peek inside one walk. The mushrooms have shrunk to half their size, now coated in a shimmering layer of sauce that smells like caramel and wild herbs. You're handed a tasting spoon. One bite. It's soft, almost custardy, with a flavor like rain-soaked bark, if that bark had studied poetry. It melts on your tongue. A second later, there's a little floral pop, like violet. You blink. You've just eaten a cloud. A wet, perfect, edible cloud. As you sit down under the overhang to savor the last of your bite, a servant kneels beside you and carefully rearranges a tray of offerings for the emperor's next meal. Mushrooms, yes, but also slivers of bitter melon and slices of preserved lotus root. All cooling foods, meant to soothe the liver during this humid season. The balance of yin and yang in every bite. Then she murmurs a strange proverb as she walks away. A good mushroom speaks softly in the stomach. You're not entirely sure what that means, but you nod respectfully anyway. It feels true. The rain is steady again. No thunder this time, just a soft curtain drawn over the world. The kind of weather where thoughts slow down, and flavors stretch longer on the tongue. The rain deepens into a steady hush, and from the rhythm of footsteps and clatter in the main courtyard, you can tell something significant is coming. Not a snack, not a side dish, this is the royal banquet, the rainy season's grand gesture. A full midday feast, prepared to both honor the emperor and, according to old scrolls, settle the humors of the land during stormy months. You step into the banquet hall just as low tables are being arranged, each polished until you can almost see your reflection, mud-splattered and mushroom-dazed though it may be. The smell that hits you is overwhelming. Not chaotic. Not random. It's a harmony of flavors fighting politely for your attention. Tangy citrus, deep anise, roasted garlic, and something vaguely cinnamon-like that you can't quite place. The royal kitchen observes a rule during monsoon banquets. Every course must balance the 5 sacred flavors: salty, sweet, sour, bitter, and spicy. It's not just a culinary obsession. It's symbolic of moral order, bodily health, and national harmony. Yes, a bowl of soup can apparently prevent uprisings if seasoned correctly. A platter passes by, sticky rice cakes, golden and crisp on the outside, infused with turmeric and minced duck, served with a small saucer of tamarind sauce. You try a piece and feel your senses split into 5 harmonious voices. Sweet rice, salty duck, sour tamarind, bitter turmeric, and the faint tingle of chile. It's like your tongue is attending a diplomatic summit. Next comes a clear broth, steaming and delicate. Inside float petals of daylily, curls of green papaya, and precisely 3 strands of what a cook whispers is phoenix foot, really just wild lemongrass boiled until it resembles bird talons. You nod solemnly and sip. It tastes like summer remembering spring, then deciding to stay a little longer. A lesser-known tidbit? Some palace feasts during the rainy season were organized according to the elements: wood, fire, earth, metal, and water, with each dish prepared to evoke one. You squint at a salad of jackfruit and vinegar marinated snails and think, well, that's definitely water. The snails, by the way, are chewy and surprisingly peppery. And you've never tasted anything like them. Historians still argue whether these banquets were truly about balance, or if they were an excuse for the kitchen to show off under the guise of seasonal health. Honestly, probably both. One thing's certain: a single misplaced chili pepper could spell embarrassment or demotion. Now the showpiece dish arrives. A carved pumpkin, hollowed and filled with stir-fried eel, bitter gourd, sweet yam, and fermented black beans. The pumpkin is shaped like a lotus flower. The symbolism is thick. The taste is thicker. You try one bite and feel your eyebrows rise involuntarily. It's like eating a slow poem. One of the most whispered about legends during the Tran dynasty was that an emperor once judged his ministers based on how they reacted to the banquet. Those who showed too much delight were suspected of gluttony. Too little, and they were cold-hearted. One poor soul choked on a dumpling and was quietly reassigned to canal maintenance. In the corner of the room, musicians begin to play soft percussion with coconut shells. It's not quite music. More like heartbeat. The rain outside keeps time. The final course is what they call tongue sleepers, tiny rolls of rice paper filled with banana blossom, honeyed mushroom, and a whisper of chile. They're meant to calm the fire of earlier dishes and lull the emperor into a state of contemplative grace. You pop one into your mouth. It vanishes like a memory. Cool, sweet, gone. You glance around. No one speaks loudly. The banquet is an act of worship, part to the emperor, part to nature, and part to the ancient belief that eating the world properly can keep it from unraveling. As the trays are cleared, a court official slowly pours warm water over your hands, scented with grapefruit blossom. You feel every drop. The rain continues. The banquet is over. But the flavor lingers. The banquet may be over, but the kitchen doesn't rest. Not even a little. Instead, it begins to bustle again, quieter, but somehow more focused. Because now it's time for the ingredient hunt. And that means stepping outside the palace walls, into the misty forest margins where the rarest delicacies wait. You trail behind 2 palace foragers as they pass through a rear gate you hadn't noticed before. Beyond it lies a narrow footpath, slick with moss and bordered by whispering bamboo. The rain here is different, more intimate. It falls in quiet drops, brushing gently against broad green leaves. Overhead, branches arch like silent guards. Your companions wear nan la, the iconic Vietnamese conical hats, and carry baskets strung to shoulder poles. Their robes are tucked at the knee. Their sandals squish with every step. You do your best to keep up. Today's quest? Rain mushrooms again, but rarer this time. And if fortune allows, perhaps a cluster of cloud tripe or long-armed fungus, known in whispers as Emperor's eyebrows. Not because they resemble the royal features, though, maybe they do, but because they're believed to restore memory and sharpen the senses. Especially during gloomy weather when the mind tends to wander. You reach a clearing beneath a cluster of ancient jackfruit trees. The ground here is soft, blanketed in wet leaves and the earthy perfume of decay. Perfect. The lead forager kneels and gently parts the underbrush with the back of a small knife. There, tucked under a log, is a patch of small, white-capped mushrooms, glistening as if dusted with dew. She picks each one as if handling glass. You help search too. Under a half-rotten bamboo stalk, you find something strange, a thin, dark tendril, like licorice come to life. The forager identifies it as rain eel root, used not for eating, but for brewing tonic soups. Good for joints, she says. And for forgetting sadness. You pocket a sample like a tiny treasure. Back at the palace, your haul is delivered straight to the herb chamber. There, a hunched master herbalist in layered robes sits beside a fireless clay stove. He arranges each item on bamboo trays, then begins to build a mushroom broth so complex you're surprised it doesn't come with its own novel. Here's what goes in. The wild mushrooms you gathered, shaved ginger bark, cloud fungus, dried and rehydrated, a paste of fermented green rice, crushed lotus seeds, and, for balance, exactly 3 drops of tamarind vinegar, aged in clay since last year's storms. 5 mushrooms, 5 flavors, he mutters, adjusting the fire. 1 spoon to wake the stomach, 2 to heal the spirit. Historians still argue whether mushroom tonics were medicine or merely warm comfort disguised in scroll-worthy names. The truth, as always, is probably both. Quirky fact? One emperor reportedly refused to eat mushrooms not foraged within 10 li of the palace, fearing they would carry foreign dreams. This sparked an entire profession of microlocal mushroom scouts. Their pay? A silver coin and a bowl of stew. Not bad, really. The pot simmers. The smell is extraordinary. It's savory, earthy, slightly sweet, like a forest exhaling. The herbalist dips a ladle into the broth, fills a lacquered bowl, and offers it to you. You sip. The liquid slides across your tongue like silk. First the warmth, then the depth, layers upon layers, like stories folded into one another. There's something primal in it. You feel your shoulders drop. Your breath slows. Then, without a word, the herbalist adds 2 purple perilla leaves to the pot and covers it again. Those are for the emperor, he says. He likes a little bitterness in the end. Keeps the mind sharp. You glance at the leaves curling in the heat and nod. Even emperors need grounding. You rise, bowl still warm in your hands, and step outside. The rain hasn't stopped, but it's softer now. More of a mist than a downpour. Birds chirp somewhere in the bamboo. A frog leaps across the path. The air smells of broth, earth, and old secrets. A meal isn't always about hunger. Sometimes, it's about returning to yourself. Through flavor, through memory, through the quiet company of mushrooms pulled from wet soil by candlelight. The palace feels heavier now. Not in a gloomy way, more like the satisfying weight of fullness after a banquet and the hush that follows a day well spent. But your journey isn't over yet. Because somewhere, just off the main courtyard, an enormous bronze pot is being lifted onto a carefully stoked fire. Its lid rings like a distant gong as it's placed. And you, lucky traveler, are about to witness the creation of the Emperor's most elaborate rainy season remedy, the soup of 39 ingredients. Yes. 39. Not 38. Not 40. It's a tradition. A superstition. A culinary dare that dates back centuries and defies common sense. The ingredients list reads like a poem, or a prescription, or a slightly unhinged shopping list. But it's real. And it's happening now. You sidle into the open-air kitchen as the cooks begin to chant aloud the ingredients, one by one, as they toss them in. It's partly for inventory, partly for ritual, and mostly to avoid forgetting something crucial and earning the Emperor's frown. Again. Black chicken, one murmurs. In it goes, the bird marinated in rice wine and herbs. Goji berries. A scoop tossed like rubies into the steam. Sea cucumber. Slippery, shiny, and reportedly excellent for longevity, though you eye it suspiciously. Ginger root. Lotus root. Wild yam. Deer antler shaving. You do a double take, but no one else flinches. Dried jujube. Ginseng. Cordyceps mushroom. Cinnamon bark. Dried mandarin peel. And still, they aren't halfway through the list. There's also a lump of something gray and wrinkled fish maw that looks like a shrunken balloon. You ask what it is. A nearby cook answers, a delicacy. Helps the skin during wet months. And firm knees. You nod as if that makes perfect sense. And then there's the controversial addition, a sliver of tiger bone ground into powder. Not legal now, of course. But back then, it was prized for heat and vitality. Historians still argue whether tiger parts were included in actual royal recipes or merely added to imperial records to boost prestige. Some scholars insist it was metaphorical. Others think it was wishful thinking from court poets who really didn't know their way around a kitchen. You lean close to the pot and catch a scent that's difficult to describe. It's like history had a baby with a medicine cabinet and then steeped it in herbal tea. It's sharp, woody, meaty, and oddly sweet. It tingles your nose and makes your teeth hum. Quirky fact? One royal astrologer once claimed that if the soup of 39 was made on a day with too much thunder, it could reverse its healing properties and turn the emperor's moods backward. So yes, soup might affect national policy. You're starting to believe it. You watch the broth bubble slowly for hours. Occasionally, a cook schemes off a layer of froth and tosses it into a side bowl, whispering a blessing. A young apprentice stirs it gently with a ladle the size of a canoe paddle. They taste test with tiny porcelain spoons and nod with grave reverence. Eventually, it's ladled into lacquered bowls, each topped with 3 green onion curls and a single goji berry, like a floating crown. The main bowl is carried reverently across the courtyard, guarded by 2 eunuchs and a goosefeather fan. The emperor will drink it alone, in silence, wrapped in robes scented with agarwood. You, meanwhile, are handed a much smaller portion. The taste is astonishing. Not one note screams. Nothing overwhelms. Instead, the flavors arrive in waves: earth, root, meat, spice, a hint of dried fruit, then a cooling aftertaste like mint if mint had studied martial arts. You sip slowly. The warmth spreads outward from your chest. Your fingers tingle. You feel strangely alert yet calm, as if your brain just had a massage while reciting Confucian poetry. Rain begins to fall again, just a drizzle, polite and rhythmic. The cooks begin cleaning the huge pot, humming a folk song about a lost spoon and a lovesick herb maiden. You chuckle quietly. Maybe it's the soup talking. One cook passes you with a grin and says, "Next time, we do the 64-ingredient porridge." You're not sure if he's serious. You hope he's not. You glance down into your empty bowl. All gone. And somehow, you feel steadier. Like the weather outside is no longer a threat, but a friend. A reminder that when the skies open up, the wise turn to soup and the truly fortunate get 39 kinds of healing in one steaming ladle. The clouds are thick again, not with drama or thunder but with that heavy, silver-gray calm that feels like a sigh from the heavens. You walk slowly through a breezeway where the air is perfumed by smoke and rice wine. A combination that always means something festive or forbidden. Or in this case, both. You turn a corner and find a row of large ceramic jars, each sealed with red paper and bound tightly with twine. Beside them, a trio of cooks huddle around a fire pit, cradling steaming ladles. This is where the emperor's rainwater wine is kept. And yes, they call it that because it's made from actual rain. You watch as one attendant carefully lifts the lid from a jar. Steam escapes, mingling with the humid air. Inside is a translucent liquid with a faint golden sheen, fermented glutinous rice wine, brewed slowly over weeks, using water caught only during auspicious rains, filtered through silk, and blessed by a palace monk. And here's the twist: while most royal drinks are ceremonial, this one actually carries weight. It's used for toasts, rituals, medicinal brews, and occasionally, hush-hush indulgences. A nearby steward leans in and whispers, "Not all emperors held their drink equally." You raise an eyebrow. He grins. One of them banned wine entirely until he caught a minister drinking in private and changed the law that afternoon. Historians still argue whether that moment was moral flexibility or imperial whimsy. The jars are stored in a cool stone cellar beneath the garden walkway. You descend into it. The air is cooler here, and lined with clay plaques detailing each jar's birth date, weather conditions, and mood. Yes, the jar's mood. A practice dating back to the Lai dynasty, where winemakers would annotate each batch with phrases like content, volatile, or sluggish. No one is sure if the wine changed, or if it was just poetic labeling. You're offered a small ceramic cup, no bigger than a thimble. The wine is warm. It smells slightly of lychee, rice husk, and sun-warmed clay. The taste? Bright, delicate, with a tiny effervescent tingle that dances on your tongue like the memory of lightning. And yet, this isn't a drink for merrymaking. Not during rainy season. Instead, it's poured slowly into a long-necked flask and delivered to the emperor for the evening toast. He will raise the cup not toward friends or laughter, but toward a shrine, where incense curls in front of ancestral tablets. The toast is quiet. Reverent. The wine is shared with ghosts. A cook tells you softly, if he spills a drop, it's a bad omen. Another adds, if he finishes the whole cup, we'll have floods. Everyone chuckles, but no one smiles too wide. There's a legend that one emperor, upon sensing an especially unlucky year, poured his entire wine toast into the ground, a gift to the water spirits. It rained for 7 days after. Whether it worked or not, the story stuck. And now, each year, the wine offering is given with a mix of hope, superstition, and insurance. Quirky side fact? Some winemakers would include a sliver of ginger root carved into the shape of a carp at the bottom of the flask. To swim through the storm, they said. You spot one today, gleaming amber at the bottom of the ceremonial flask. It's oddly comforting. You're handed a second sip. This one cooler, unspiced, and meant for reflection. You stare out at the garden. Raindrops cling to the banana leaves. The koi in the pond barely rippled the surface. Everything is still. Waiting. Then comes the forbidden toast. A brief moment rarely witnessed, often denied, when the emperor, if pleased with his food or his dreams or just the feeling of rain on wooden beams, would lift a cup alone, without ritual, and drink to himself. Or maybe to the sky. Or maybe to no one. That toast is unrecorded, undocumented, unsanctioned. But the cooks always prepare for it. Just in case. And you? You sip your wine quietly, surrounded by old jars and older stories. The air smells of rain and rice, firewood and memory. Somewhere above, a bell rings once. The emperor has lifted his cup. Let's hope he doesn't spill. Evening settles in like warm broth poured over tired bones. The mist thickens, not quite fog, but heavy enough that the garden lanterns glow like floating moons. You take a breath, deep, fragrant, a mix of charcoal, rice steam, and something distinctly fishy. Which makes sense, because you're about to witness the most infamous scandal in this entire soggy culinary circuit. It begins with a carp. Or, more accurately, with a missing carp. You find yourself back in the kitchen courtyard, where a crowd has gathered, quietly, tensely. Not panicking, but certainly whispering. A cook points toward an empty platter. Another gestures toward the fish pond. A eunuch shakes his head. The emperor's prized gold-scaled river carp, meant for tonight's light supper, has vanished. The dish in question? A delicately steamed carp with chrysanthemum petals and fermented plum sauce, designed to cool the blood and soothe the heart. It was supposed to be the final savory note of the rainy day. Instead, it's gone. You lean in closer, pretending not to eavesdrop as two kitchen boys argue about whether it jumped the pond wall or was liberated by someone hoping to curry favor elsewhere. One claims to have seen the head chef sweating like a rice ball near the substitute fish, a mudfish, noticeably cheaper, definitely not royal. Historians still argue whether this kind of substitution was a common trick or a high-stakes culinary crime. But in this kitchen? It's sacrilege. Royal meals are sacred texts, and swapping a premium fish for something bottom-dwelling and muddy is like replacing the emperor's ink brush with a spoon. Functional? Sure. But someone's getting demoted. You catch sight of the alleged substitute lying innocently on a cutting board. It has been meticulously filleted, garnished, and arranged to look as much like carp as mudfish possibly can, which isn't very. Its eyes are wrong. Its scales too dark. Even the tail has a defeated curl, like it knows it's out of its league. And yet, the aroma from the steaming pot is divine. You can't help yourself. You sneak a bite of a test sliver set aside by the cook. It's rich, tender, shockingly pleasant. A little earthy, yes, but the plum sauce lifts it with a tangy, floral brightness that makes your eyes close involuntarily. It's delicious. One quirky detail? In a 14th century scroll, there's mention of a mudfish served during a flood when no other protein was available. The emperor reportedly called it humble but honest, and the cook was given a silver fan. Whether this mudfish will earn a fan or a flogging? That depends on tonight's tasting. You linger by the courtyard gate as the dish is placed nervously, reverently, onto a black lacquer tray. A eunuch carries it off with expressionless grace, but you notice the tightness in his grip. The waiting begins. 10 minutes. 15. The rain falls in soft sheets. Then, a runner returns. He speaks quietly to the steward. A small exhale of relief. No harsh words. No shattered bowls. No sudden screams. Just acceptance. Maybe the emperor didn't notice. Or maybe he did, and appreciated the ingenuity. Or maybe, just maybe, he didn't care what kind of fish it was as long as it tasted like the rain itself. You glance back at the cook, still sweating, still pale, but now smiling. Barely. Later, you hear a whisper that the emperor requested an extra ladle of plum sauce. A good sign. A subtle sign. But a sign nonetheless. Quirky fact? Some rainy season chefs believe that mudfish tasted sweeter during storms, as if the pressure coaxed something gentler from their flesh. Science? Maybe not. But your taste buds aren't arguing. You step back under the eaves. The air smells cleaner now. As if the scandal never happened. The kitchen returns to rhythm. And somewhere, in the bottom of the pond, the rest of the carp sigh in relief.